wearing a t-shirt that says never made.
I believe him. I think he's telling the truth.
All right, guys. Today's guest is a certified legend in the fight game. One of the original UFC bad boys, a man with a granite chin, wild left hand, stories that could fill 10 octagons. Chris Leben, how are you doing today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and we appreciate it. I've been watching you from the beginning, man. I've been a UFC fan since 07. You know, anybody that's been a fan since 07 knows who you are. You're a legend. You had a lot of fights in the UFC. You've beat some notable names. You're a ref. You're a judge. You're a coach. You ran through BKFC. How do you feel today?
Feel pretty good, man. Pretty good. I'm tired.
You
I'm
just got
tired.
done with practice, huh?
I just got done coaching. Jake Paul fight this weekend, and then soon, right back home, right back to work training. So, I'm busy. I'm busy, and that is a blessing. You know, my fight career may be over as far as being a competitor, but it's far from over. The fighting is my life, it's my world, uh and it's still what I do. And every day I'm doing something that has to do with combat sports.
Well, as a longtime fan, I love to see you around the octagon. I love to see you around the fight game. You know, I want to see all the legends in the fight game because you guys are responsible for carrying the sport up until where it's at right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as the sport ages and matures, you're going to see more and more retired guys, ex Hall of Famers, ex that are going to hopefully step into those officiating roles.
Same. Chris, I'm going to go straight into my first question.
Okay.
I've watched a lot of your fights growing up. My favorite finish was against Alessio Sakara. Why was it my favorite finish? Because it seems like that fight you just won with brute force. Um, what's your favorite finish or your most memorable match you've ever had?
Well, there's two. Obviously the one everybody remembers is Vanderlei Silva.
Of
Um,
course.
and he was my hero. I tried to emulate his style, and I was a huge Vanderlei fan. That's why I wanted that fight. So to get that fight and then to win in the manner that I did was huge. My favorite fight of all time was against a kid named Otto Olson, which a lot of people don't know about that fight because this was pre UFC. And Otto was a three-time All-American for Michigan, as far as a wrestler. I think his only loss in his senior year, I think, was Josh Koscheck, actually. But he took second in ADCC, and he was undefeated up in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm from. So when I fought him, I really thought I was going to lose that fight. The kid was really good, and he did. He kicked my ass that first round. Landed a whole bunch of shots, took me down, threw on his patented choke, and I remember being like, well, this is it. I raised my hand to tap, and then I kind of thought, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to go to sleep, and I did. I went to sleep. I had a dream in that fight. Luckily, the rep was on the other side, so he didn't see me pick up my arm and then my arm just fall limp. My friend's video, you can see I pick up my arm to tap, it just drops right, and it's laying there limp. He then tries to adjust the choke, and as he does, I wake back up. Somehow pop my head out, somehow get back to my feet, and then I'm stumbling backwards. He's running in to try to finish me, and I landed left hand. That was it. It was just a drunken left hand, just haymaker thrown wild after I was completely unconscious. And the greatest thing about that fight uh was that he was the hometown favorite. This venue was completely full of auto fans. Nobody there. I was the out of town guy, and I love being the bad guy. In the video, you could just see just a million beers, bottles, cups just flying into the ring immediately. I was getting bombarded with bottles and glasses. The crowd went nuts. They literally had to sneak us out the back door. We had to like run out of the cage. They snuck us out the back, and that was a great feeling. That was a great win. We pissed off everybody with that one.
Was that the first time the crowd hated you that much?
Um, no, because I beat a couple other guys from this part of town. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and there was a show. There's a guy named Charlie Pearson who years later I'm friends with now. He had a gym up in Everett, Washington, about 20 miles outside of Seattle, and he kind of ran that Seattle area, fight show, that amateur and pro fight card up there, and then Chael Sonnen ran the FCF. So, they wanted to beat me. I had fought several guys from up there, and I'd beaten all of them. And then finally kind of their last ditch effort was, well, we'll put him against Otto. We'll put him against Otto because Otto beats everybody. We can beat Chris that way. And it didn't work out, you know. So so yeah,
Yep. So you like being the bad guy? You like breaking hearts?
I do. I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all, and like I always tell people, in this business, as they say, it doesn't matter if they love you or hate you. All that matters is they care, they care one way. They either really want to see you win or they really want to see you lose.
Yeah.
And especially the young Chris Leben. A young Chris Leben didn't mind pissing people off. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a little more I'm not quite so rough around the edges anymore as I used to be. But back then, yeah, I didn't mind ruffling feathers, that's for sure.
That's amazing. We all love that character. Not everybody can play that role. Not everybody can handle that.
I'd say you're 100% right. I was talking to somebody again the other day, and like for example, Phil Baroni. Phil Baroni, that guy made so much money because he didn't mind being the heel. Everybody nowadays they want to be Captain America. They want to be the star. But if you look at WWE or anything else, there's guys that people love to hate. And if you can play that role, you can do well in this game, for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people hated you after you beat Vanderlei,
They
with the
did.
halftime. And the way you beat him, I've seen that a lot in your career. I feel like you beat a couple guys in the BKFC like that too, the halftime clinch and the uppercuts.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I always tell people I talk a lot about that tie clinch. A lot of people train tie clinch and throwing knees and whatnot. And my whole stance on that has been why I don't need to throw knees. If you're 170 or above, if you get a guy here, I think a good clean uppercut. If you got any sort of power when you're pulling with this hand and it's coming up with this hand, that's gonna that's gonna knock him out. So that'll put him down. So I never really needed to throw knees. I'd rather get the tie clinch, go single, fire that uppercut, and that's usually worked well for me. And then that way I can keep my feet on the ground, and be safe.
Well, a recent stat came out about Ilya Topuria. Um, it said that he's never thrown a head kick or a body kick in the UFC.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I found that kind of interesting, given the fact that, they say he's a really good, jujitsu artist. But he's just knocking everybody out. I was at the fights on Saturday. So I saw that, he was just really like
I,
boxing heavy.
and I think people are starting to realize for MMA that is the way to be. It's really the striking is 70% boxing. Many years ago, Bruce Lee said it best. He said, "You want to beat any 20-year martial artist, take a year of boxing and a year of wrestling." And I think to this day that wrestling base, and then the boxing heavy striking. I like I tell people, I don't train Muay Thai. I don't really even train kickboxing. I call it kickboxing, but what I teach is boxing with kicks. You know Real hands, focus on the power with your hands. And for me, everybody always says finish with a kick. I'm kind of the other way around there too. I know that the left hand is what's going to put him down. So I use my kicks to set up my hands. So the kicks are really to bring the attention down low, and so I can find that knockout, because when you look at knockouts in the UFC, I don't know what the exact stat is, but I bet 70% of them are from a right hand. 70, 80%. So we spend all this time on all this other stuff, but really it's almost always the right hand. So figure out what you got to do to get to that right hand. That would be my advice for MMA striking.
That's actually very interesting. I didn't never thought about that. That 70, 80% of knockouts will come through a right hand. Now that I think of it, probably 70, 80% of knockouts on the street probably come by a right hand.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And if you're on the street, listen, keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you don't need to throw a head kick, why take the risk? If you can get the job done with your hands and stay stable, I would recommend that for sure.
Throughout your UFC career, what has been your experience with weight cutting, bad or good?
Horrible. Huh. Horrible. I always cut a lot of weight. I think there's some guys nowadays that cut even more than I did. But just to give you an example, I would usually show up to Vegas 202, 203, 204 to make weight. I've been as heavy as 212. My biggest cut ever was 212 to 185 pounds. Uh,
Wow.
but usually 202, 203 if I was on track and I was doing what I was supposed to do. And here's the thing about weight cutting. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. It's not safe. It makes you perform worse the next day. But here's the other thing about weight cutting: bigger, faster, stronger. And that's a real. There's a reason we have weight divisions in this sport. So finding that balance where you're as big and as strong as you can possibly be without losing too much from the weight cut. You're gonna lose some, that's for sure. But unfortunately, it's one of those things about professional athletics. There's a lot of things in professional athletics that aren't pretty, and it's one of the sides of the sports, that I really think the fans don't need to see too much, because it is ugly. It's tough. In my opinion, the weight cut for me has always been much harder than the fight. You know, I almost get more relief in a training camp when I'm done with the weight cut than when I'm done with the fight. I'm like, oh, thank God I made weight. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like that's a bigger victory for me sometimes than even the victory of the fight.
And that's why we call our channel Never Made Weight, because we've been fight fans for a long time, me and my family. Um and we hear from fighters very often that the hardest fight is actually the weight cut, and it's not even the fight itself, it's actually just the preparation and the lead up to the fight. You're a judge now, you're a ref now, you're in the game, you're a coach, you're all over the place. What suggestion do you have to kind of make this process a little safer for the fighters? Do you have any suggestions to avoid health negatives and complications?
For the weight cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the nice thing is I'm an official here in California. In California, we really do kind of set the standard in a lot of ways, and we're doing some things. California has a 5-year plan as far as we're implementing rules. Right now, there's some fighters in the UFC that'll just never fight in California because of it. Right now we have a 10% and a 15% rule. So if you come back the day of the fight and you're more than 10% over, you gain more than 10% of your weight back that so let's say you weigh 200 pounds. If you come back and you weigh over 220, you're going to get put on a watch list. Right. And if you come back and you weigh over and you weigh over 15%, so if you were 200 pounds, you came back, you weighed 230, right? They're gonna maybe not let you fight. They may suspend you. They may force you to fight at another weight class the next time. You know, But I think ultimately the idea is, and I might be wrong, so I got to be careful here. But I think ultimately the idea is that, if guys are gaining more than 15%, we don't want them. We don't want them to fight. We want them to be below that. Um, that's one thing they can do. Now, in like ONE FC and stuff, obviously they have hydration testing, and I know that that gets kind of iffy because there's ways to smudge that. There's ways to get around that. Um, but it is good. College wrestling, I think they do that as well. It is good. There's other ideas that have been kicked around. Weighing in the day of the fight would obviously change it so guys couldn't cut as much. Um, but I hear arguments on both sides. So ultimately, I think the issue with weight cutting, it's hard. There's no way you're ever going to make it completely safe. There's no way you're ever going to get rid of it completely. But certainly I think with these weight limits, gain the amount that you can gain back, I think that does help, because if you can only put 10 pounds back on, you're gonna stay leaner.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that about the whole California 10 to 15% thing. That's actually a really good piece of information. That's definitely a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Um, Back when your class was fighting, you guys didn't have much footage of you guys, the troubles of cutting weight. Now there's cameras following fighters all over the place, so there's so much footage of that grueling process. I'm sure you've seen the cyborg videos. You
Yeah.
know,
I actually put a video up of one of my weight cuts, and if I remember right, the UFC called and said, "Hey, take that video, take that video
wow,
down." I
wow,
think they didn't want it out there either. Hindsight, now that I'm older, it probably wasn't pretty to look at. You know,
for sure, for sure. It's scary to see a fighter cut weight. They look like a skeleton, really. Um,
it is. I've seen a lot of guys that literally have to. Dominic Cruz, for example, they almost have to carry him onto the scale. Like his team is like carrying him to get him on the scale. And then all of a sudden the next day he's zoom, swell just like
yeah,
a sponge.
yeah,
Get out, swell it right back up.
yeah. So, Chris, who's your favorite fighter, current and all time?
Oh. So as an official, that's a tricky one.
Okay, all time.
Sorry, I'm eating these chewy sprees. I bought
It's all good.
these things
Enjoy
for my
yourself.
vending machine over here, but they didn't go in, so I'm ending up eating them all.
This, this
Terrible.
podcast is called Never Made Weight. We're snack friendly.
Yeah, yeah. I have a small sugar issue. It's all I got anymore is sugar. So,
Yeah,
um,
we all love sugar.
yeah. So I mean, obviously the sport has evolved, and there are so many amazing athletes out there. Again, I can't pick or specifically endorse one as a judge. Um, of all time. I really I lean towards some of the guys some of the old Pride guys back in the day. I think if you know who Ernesto Hoost is for kickboxing, he was always my favorite Muay Thai guy. Back in the K1 days. Um, and then for fighting, I was a huge Fedor fan growing up. A huge Vanderlei Silva fan. Um, there was a few fights that Vanderlei Silva had in Pride where, like when he fought Sakuraba, I thought he killed him. I mean, he was just so violent and so overly aggressive, and dominant, and such a dominant force that how could you not love that? How could you not love those soccer kicks when he would jump up and soccer kick somebody in the head?
Yeah, definitely aligns with your style. So it makes sense that you will be a fan of that.
Yeah, yep.
Why'd you start fighting in the first place?
Modeling career wasn't working out. No, yeah, I mean, I did some boxing in middle school. I wrestled. I wrestled in high school. When I got out of high school, I wasn't exactly college bound. You know, I had hoped to wrestle in college, but I really wasn't. I wasn't going to college. So, um, long story short, you know, I was just kind of living life. And my brother called me and he said, one day, my brother was a used car salesman, and he called me. He said, "Hey, Randy Couture and Matt Lindland are kicking the shit out of each other in the garage at this car lot that I just got a job at." And I said, "You're kidding me." And Randy Couture was the UFC champ at that time. This is like, God, I don't know, 2001, 2000. And I was like, I'm on my way down there. So I shot down there, and that was Team Quest before it was even Team Quest. They had just thrown a wrestling mat down in the maintenance shop of the car lot, you know, and it was just sheetrock with holes in it, you know, from where people's heads were going through the wall. And it was Linlin, it was Randy, it was Chael, it was my coach, a guy named Robert Follis, and maybe one or two other guys in there. And that's when I was like, "Hey, sign me up, let's go." So, you know, I signed up, and that's how I started fighting. I was going to a little bit more. I was going to night school at the time, and I remember I came home and I told my girlfriend at the time. I said, "Hey, I'm done going to night school." She goes, "Oh, good. You could spend it. You know, you could spend some time at home with me." And I was like, "No, I have to train every day." You know,
Yeah.
ultimately, had my first fight 6 months later, and then that was it, man. Once I got that first W, I was hooked, and you know that's all I was gonna do.
But if you never found MMA, who would Chris Leben be today?
Oh God, I don't even want to think about it. I don't know. I'm so grateful that I did, because I'll tell you what, this sport saved my life. This sport kept me out of jail, and legitimately saved my life. You know, when I was struggling with alcohol and lifestyle choices, you know, the fear of getting the shit kicked out of me on national TV would forced me to clean up my act, at least for a couple weeks to get ready for a fight. I think that probably saved me. I also, wanting to be able to fight and travel, kept me from doing anything too illegal, because I knew I couldn't get in trouble. You know, I couldn't be out fighting in the street. I couldn't be doing all this stuff, because I needed to be able to fight in the cage. So I really credit this sport to saving my life. And then obviously the people around me, the people that I met through the sport, to making me the man that I am today.
It's crazy how the most violent sport in the world saved your life, and it's crazy how the most humble people are
I'm
are,
out
are
of
in
it, right?
are in a fight gym.
It really is. It really is. And you know, here's the thing. You learn, you know, I learned what it is to be a man. I learned all those skills in the gym. I didn't have a dad growing up, and I didn't really have any role models or anything else. So, you know, a lot of who I am came from the gym. And when you're in the gym, you know, you got to be the nail before you're the hammer. You know, and if you want to make it in this sport, you're going to have to get used to being the nail. And I think that's where the humbleness comes from. A lot of guys come in. I get a lot of guys that come into my gym, tough guys, you know, the guys that are 100 and 0 on the street, and they don't do well because they can't handle having some kid that's 50 pounds lighter than them beat them up on the jujitsu mat. They just can't take it. And they don't, it hurts their pride too much, and they don't hang around.
You're
You
talking
know,
about the IC red guys.
yes, I see red guys, right? So, you know, you you get beat up. We beat each other up, you know, and then we pick each other up off the mat. We patch each other up. We support each other, and you learn all that as behaviors in the fight gym, you know, in the most violent room in the city.
Yeah, yeah. Chris, it's been an honor talking to you. As I said, I'm a humongous fight fan, and I've been a fan of you for a while. And we're already past schedule. I'm gonna leave you with one hypothetical question, and I'm gonna let you get back to it. I know you're a busy man. We got the last question here is how many eighth graders with no fight experience can you take before gassing out? And they come in waves of three.
They come in waves of three. Oh man, I don't know. I suppose it depends on what neighborhood are these eighth graders coming from?
They don't have fight experience.
Are they coming from the ghetto? Are they little hood kids? Because if they are, they might be a little, it might be a little harder. But I think I'd get through the first 10 waves pretty easily. You know, but I'm getting older now. I probably started getting tired after that. So I don't know. 12
That 30 is
waves.
a good number.
Yeah, 12 waves, 15 waves, maybe. You just have to put them down quick. Can't waste a lot of time.
Yeah. Step back straight, step back straight. Right. Hey, Chris, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Before we log off, is there something you want to leave us with?
If anybody's ever in San Diego, the training center, trainingcentersd.com. Obviously, my hit me up on Instagram. Check out the gym on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Whether you live in San Diego or you're just here on vacation, stop in. Let's get some training in.
That sounds great. If I'm ever in the city, I'll come by for sure.
Please do. Please do.
That's where you guys heard it here, bro. It's Training Center SD, right?
Yep,
.com.
trainingcentersd.com. And even if you're not fighting and you just want to stop in and say hi, pop in and say hi. We'd love to have you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it, man.
All right, brother.